Hey everybody,
Oh,
how you doing, Andy?
good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. So we are now live, and
Excellent.
as I always say to the people watching, where are you watching from? So let us know where you are watching from. People are starting to come in. I already see that Andrew Nichols, who's also from the UK, is watching. Good to see you here,
Excellent.
Andrew. So we got me, Andrew, Andy, and Andrew Nichols. Triple
Brilliant.
Andrews going on here. Cool. And let's see.
Hopefully, we've got quite a bit of a UK contingent. Hopefully,
Yeah, we got Dave Dave Ellison from the UK as well.
nice.
Carla from Las Vegas. Good to see you here.
Oh yeah.
Someone from Oregon. And so that reminds me to remind you, remember to please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic so that I'll be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. You should see that in the live. Just underneath is a link, streamyard.com/Facebook. Give permission, and then it'll show your name and your profile pic so we can credit you. Cool. So once again, let us know where you're watching from, everybody. I guess it's raining in the UK, says Dave.
Oh, very nice. It's been one of those days. It's nothing there.
That almost never happens, right?
Yeah, right. We've had some really good weather recently. To be fair, it's been quite good.
Warm? How warm?
In the 30s.
Yeah.
Too bad. It's gotten to it. Yeah, I'm on the south coast, so we get it quite nicely.
Nice
down here. I've got family a bit further north, and they've had it pretty okay.
Nice. And we got Stan from Golden, Colorado. Good to see you here.
Nice.
Thanks everyone for being here. So yeah, I'm we have some Jack from Ashland, Oregon. Cool. And yeah, I'm streaming this to the Facebook groups and also to LinkedIn Live.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got accepted to LinkedIn Live a ways back, and
okay.
They started to have new features where they started creating like an event, I think, for you. So once you schedule, they kind of post it for you, which is nice. So before we begin, just want to give a quick shout out to StreamYard. So StreamYard makes this all possible, a multi-streaming app. And here's a little intro video to StreamYard. Thank you, StreamYard. Cool.
Yeah.
And let's see. Someone says, hi, you. Nice to meet you. Thanks, Facebook user.
Facebook user, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Let us know.
See, yeah, try to give permissions to StreamYard so we can credit you. Yeah. So, Andy, do you want to switch over to the slideshow view and show that now? So a little bit of your slideshow. There we go.
You want?
Yeah, we're there. So cool. A little bit of your photography work and your compositing work, yeah?
Yeah, some of these are from camera. Some of them do have some compositing bits and pieces.
Stonehenge.
Stuff at Stonehenge. This is Portsmouth, where I live.
Nice.
Yeah, that's God of Every Point. That's a place down in Cornwall.
Nice, the light play. Right?
Light painting. Yeah, it's not too far. It's in Dorset, Jurassic Coast, they call it.
Nice.
This is that's a landing craft in Portsmouth. This is Corfe Castle.
Stonehenge.
Yeah. More light painting. These are all recent shots, by the way. These have all been shot in the last maybe 3 or 4 months.
Nice.
This was last weekend. It's a friend of mine.
Beautiful.
Yeah. This is a recent one last weekend in church. I've mixed and matched some pictures.
Yeah, good mix.
Yeah. So that's pretty much.
Yeah, jump over.
Yeah. That's a few pictures from recent stuff.
And I see that Thomas used to be an admin of the group, very helpful, is here. Glad to see you here, Thomas. Hope everything is good with you. And so we got another Facebook user, been there. B Mouth very often is language school leader. Not sure what that means, but
language school teacher. Okay.
So it says great ones. Yeah.
Excellent.
So Andy, do you want to introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Andy Hornby. I'm a photographer from the south of the UK, the south coast actually, but I've moved around quite a bit. And I started with photography in my late teens in college. I was actually part of an art course, and that was back in the days of film, which was Andrew Nichols is based in Pompey. I knew the name. Just thought I'd throw it in there. I'd heard the name before, but yeah. So I'm from the film photography days, and love the aspect of photography of taking the picture and telling a story. Didn't really like darkroom editing, and then when digital photography came into its own a few decades later, I picked up a camera again and started shooting landscapes and got into portrait photography, weddings. I'm now a professional wedding photographer. I go across the UK and do weddings. I have been published in various magazines nationally and internationally. My landscapes I've been doing now for best part of maybe a decade and a half. And for me, landscape photography is a passion more than the other stuff. The other stuff is great, and I do make a little bit of money. My business makes a bit of money, but landscapes are where it's photography for me. So I like to have a play. I go to different locations. Sometimes there's locations I get to where I potentially can't go back. So I do have a knack of doing things like sky replacements. Actually, in the photography and Lightroom group earlier, a gentleman added a post and suggested that potentially changing the sky in a landscape photo is potentially taking you away from photography. And I get where the ideas come from, but I do a lot of commercial stuff and a lot of locations where I potentially can't go back to. And I love editing. Editing for me is, again, it's another passion. It takes my storytelling to another level, and I can take a shot and make it my own. And yeah, that's really where I'm at. I love to edit, and the last 3 or 4 years I've been teaching photography, teaching editing, that kind of stuff, a bit like Andrew. And yeah, just love to connect with people. I'm thankful for people like Andrew and the Photoshop groups to enable me to get out there to everyone and speak to people. I'm a people person, love to speak to people, love to take comments, and for
Great.
people to ask me questions and stuff like that. And these kind of live events I'd like to do more of, and love to have people ask questions and stuff. So yeah, this is where I'm at.
Excellent. Cool. So you want to switch your view over to Photoshop, and we'll jump right in?
Yeah, sure. So this is a picture I took. It must be about 2 or 3 months ago now. I went to a place called Corfe Castle. It's in Dorset. That's the south of the UK, but a bit further along the coast from where I am. And as a location, it's shot by lots and lots and lots of people. Again, it's an iconic kind of landscape location. Let me just move my screen so I get a full shot there.
I was just about to ask if you could do that.
Yeah, it's a bit busy at the bottom.
It looks good now. Looks good.
Yeah, it just means that places like this that are maybe an hour or two away is quite far away, depending on traffic and stuff like that. I don't generally get to them as often as I would like to. And on this occasion, I managed to get a shot from the side of the hill where not many people shoot. And it's although it's an iconic location, it's not a place, or this particular angle is not really something that I've had before. So I love it. And I have edited this before. So what I've done with this image is done a bit of sky replacement, a little bit of color grading. I've actually added some fog and other aspects and bits and pieces in and about the hillside to make it look very dramatic. And it's something I like to do. Again, it's an editing passion of mine. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to edit. It's probably not going to come out the same as what my last edit did, because I know I edit things more than once and they never, or at least rarely look the same. But I'm going to attempt a similar thing that I've done before. You may have seen on the poster that the image ends up very dramatic. So I tend to work in Photoshop when I do these kind of edits. Lightroom is a big deal for me as well for landscapes, but for this kind of editing, Photoshop kind of lends itself to this. And I like to work non-destructively. So you might see a lot of layers appear and disappear and all that kind of stuff on the right hand side there. If anybody has any questions that I haven't particularly covered or haven't talked about a certain thing that I've done, I'll try to go as slow and as methodical as I possibly can do. But certainly leave a question. Andrew will let me know there's a question, and Andrew will ask me, and I will come back to anything that anyone has any questions for. So the first thing I generally do with any image in Photoshop is copy the layer. That's Command J or Control J, and that just copies the initial layer. It means that I can come back to the main layer if I have to. And if I'm going to do a sky replacement, it's generally going to be the first thing I do, because in the sky replacement in Photoshop, you can affect the foreground as well. And if I do all my color grading now and change the sky later, it means that it's probably going to change the color grading that I do. So I actually want to color grade after that. So if we go to edit and down to sky replacement, we can look in the sky replacement module in Photoshop. I actually love this. There's other softwares out there that replace the sky, but I think Photoshop does a really, really good job. And funnily enough, the image that I'm going to use is the one that's selected because that's the one I used last. But if you open up the panel here, you can see Photoshop has a lot of skies itself. You can add your own skies. Funnily enough, I've got a sky replacement pack that I have on sale. Just throwing that in there as a bit of a plug. But to add skies, you can just hit the plus button there, and you can then search through your computer in your own Windows browser or Mac browser and find any image you have and replace the sky. Some of the skies I have in there actually are my own skies that I've taken that aren't Photoshop skies, but you can have a play around and just swap things around. It's just a matter of clicking on a sky. And
I was going to say that I like the way that it replaces a sky without you having to knock out the sky first. Absolutely. Or mask out that area.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the good thing about Photoshop and the other apps don't do this is you can move the sky by pulling up and down just like that, which is pretty awesome, pretty amazing. So let's actually put that back. I've gone into there. Let's just cancel that for a second. We'll go back in. So I have been talking a lot today. I've been on a workshop today, so my throat is a bit sore. So if I do stop and drink for a little while, it's just something that's going to happen, I'm afraid. Let me find the image that I was using. It's that one now. So with this image, I actually want to drag it down a little bit because I don't want all the dark bottom of the sky there. And I know from the location I was in and the time of day I was in, it was actually a sunrise, and the sun would have risen over this side. And the current sky replacement has the sun coming from over here. So I'm going to flip the sky. Excuse me. And that makes the sky look like it's actually coming from this location almost over to the left, which was advantageous to what I wanted at the time. And again, we can light the color of the foreground by using some of the sliders down here, so we can adjust the lighting of the sky in the foreground within the sky replacement module itself. So I can get to a point where I had a very blue sky before. Now I've got a very yellow sky, and you can see the foreground adds the orange and ambers and yellows into it very, very succinctly. And actually, it's just a sky replacement picture. If that's all you wanted to do, you're actually going to be not too displeased with your efforts there. And the good thing about this is Photoshop gives you the masks of the sky directly, so you can still mess around with things and swap things around from here. Do apologize. Just literally from there. So the mask is already there. If you ever need to pick the mask, you can just click on that, and you've got the mask of the sky there ready to do whatever you want to do with it. And you can do pretty much anything. Let's Control D that, get rid of the thing there. So I'm gonna take the sky replacement, close that for a second because it's a group. It adds it as a group, which is pretty good as well. You can turn the whole group off, and you see that the foreground is affected. Literally, you can change anything. I love the sky placement in Photoshop. Sky placements in other apps are quite good, but they have their own advantages. But the advantages in Photoshop are crazy good. And looking at the sky placement now, if I hit the group, I can see that over the right hand side there, it hasn't quite hit. So I'm going to hit the right hand arrow, just move it over ever so slightly because it's just off to the left. If it's, you can enlarge it. Obviously, if I wanted to enlarge the sky, I can just Control T. Come out and just enlarge it by doing that and just take it all out of the way. There, you could do all sorts. So sky placement for me in Photoshop is a fantastic thing. People love it, people hate it. It's one of those chalk and cheese kind of things. You either like it or you don't. It's just one of those things. So what I'm going to start doing now actually is affect the landscape itself. And to do that, I'm going to add layers to things like the hillside, which you can't quite see. For the castle is actually on a hill and it goes down here. This thing in the background is actually in the background. So we're going to add a different layer for this hill with the castle all the way down to here. And then this foreground hill here, which is, and I know it's going to be really tricky to select. We're going to select that and have that on its own layer too. And we're going to place these fog items in various formats and various different ways within the different layers. So it looks like there's fog coming up from the other valley, the other side of the hillside, which the castle is on, and in the foreground here behind this layer here. And we're just going to make this image look really dramatic and have different layers. So the first thing we need to do, of course, we don't need to select the sky layer. This background hillside needs to be selected out almost of the castle, and we're not worried about the selection in front of this first hill grass because we won't see that anyway. So I'm actually going to zoom in slightly and show you that this hillside actually goes down there. So if I take a selection, there's many selection tools out there and people are going to hate me. I love to just use the polygon lasso tool. It's just easy, and we're going to feather this slightly anyway, so I'm not overly worried. This selection can take quite a while, and if someone has something as detailed as this castle, you might want to take a little bit more time than I do. I'm going to do this very, very quickly for the sake of this video, because when I originally edited this this image to do what we're doing tonight, it took me about an hour, and we don't really have an hour. So I'm going to quickly go around here, and then I'm going to show you the selection I actually have saved from my other picture in a minute, because the castle here has some really, if I zoom in even further, some really intricate, obviously it's brick, it's not straight, and it's derelict, so it's all beaten up and all kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of bits in there. I have done this already. I'm just showing you this as an exercise. You could use a pen tool. I find the pen tool is very accurate, but I don't use it probably the way it should be used, and it takes me absolutely forever to get a selection. So let's have a look up here. So if I zoom out, you get the point. I'm going to be going all the way around this castle here. Let's do a rough selection for a second. All the way down this hillside, over these walls. I guess they are still walls, even though I don't know what happened to this place. I should probably find out the history. But all the way down here, the roadside is on the other side of this hill, so that's going to be selected outside the area. Bish, bash, bosh, bosh, bosh. Come all the way down here, go this side of this hill because it won't matter. And that would be our selection. We then have to take out all these little areas inside here. So if you hold down the Option key, you'll see that my selection goes to minus. We then have to go through all of these, and I have done this. I'll show you in a second. All these areas here, all this area down here. It's all through outside the back. This is obviously all the hillside. This area here, that's what part of the wall, and there's a bush, I think, right behind by the wall there. But all these areas are part of the hillside at the back, which we don't want. And that'll be where you'd be looking, you would do a very good selection of this. Let me deselect that, and I'm going to load my, hopefully I've still got it. I haven't lost it. Load my selection, Weir Fog. There we go. And there's my selection. This is a better selection I did for my actual, you'll see I took a bit of time, went around everything. Yeah, not too bad actually. And that was my selection. Well, it doesn't matter about this area down the front because we're gonna reselect that by itself anyway. But that's a bit more tricky. So that is my selection. I want this on its own layer. So from here, on this picture, I can do, I think, Control J. No, Shift Command J. Yeah, and that puts it on its own layer. So I can turn that off and turn that off, and if I turn that off and turn it on, it's on its own layer. It's its own thing. So anything I put in between these layers is going to show up in the background here. And for instance, the fog, which is going to be what we are going to be putting in through there, is going to look pretty darn awesome. I'm going to leave doing the fog just at the moment. I'm actually going to then select this hillside at the front because I want to make all my selections first. It's the most laborious part of the job. You ask anyone about selections, and I'm going to quick select.
Andy,
yeah,
you take a quick question.
Absolutely.
Two questions. Andrew Nichols from the UK says, "How do you save your selections?"
Okay, so once you've got a selection or you've got these marching ants, if you go up to select and go to save selection, you can then give it any name you like. Front fog.
Great.
Which I've done before, and that will save your selection. You can then go back in at any time to load selection and then find it in there. I've got two front fogs now because I've done one before. Hope that helps.
And then a quick question for Facebook user.
Yeah.
Any special brush set that you like to use? They say the de-harm brushes. I don't know. Never heard of it.
There's not really. I mean, I'm going to be adding some grass back into this hillside area because when we do the selection, it's not going to make a very good selection around the grass. It's a bit like hair. When the background is the same color, it's not, even if I do select a mask, it's not going to do a very good job of selecting the grass on the edge. You see, it doesn't even want to select this bit of grass down. That's because I'm on that layer. It won't select very well. And I'm using the shift key to deselect areas outside there as well. It's not going to do a very good selection on the strands, the single strands, like you would with single hair. So I'm actually going to add grass back with a brush, actually. Photoshop has a very good brush, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to put this grass on its own layer. So I'm going to do Shift Command J. So we now have the grass on its own layer. So in between all these layers, we can add stuff. So I hope I answered the question there for Facebook user. I don't have any particular brush sets. Over the years, I've bought brushes, never used them. I think Photoshop has its own brushes, really.
And also, Andrew Nichols says thanks.
No problem. Absolutely. So if we look at just the grass selection that we have just made, you see the edge is very rough there. I can try and clean that up if I control and click on the layer there and go to actually if we go back a few steps, let me just go back a few steps, see if I can clean it up beforehand. So let me add this layer back to the background layer and see if select and mask will actually do anything for the edge there. We've got a refine edge tool that is pretty good for hair. Depends. We can run this across the edge of that, see if it does anything. It's doing a little bit, not a fantastic amount. Yeah, it's picking up some of the background. You have to be really careful because if we do, we can minus some of this off. We can hold down the option and minus an area there. Let's minus some bits up here. It's like hair. If you try and select hair that's the same color as the background, it's very difficult. Even Photoshop hasn't got the technology to really refine that. You have to do other things, like maybe use the smudge tool for hair, that kind of stuff, which is okay. It's laborious, time consuming. Let's just get rid of a bit down there. But And you see the selection, it's almost unusable, really. We're going to keep that because it's going to help us. I'm going to leave that as mask, actually, because that's actually okay to leave that as mask. It's added it as a new layer from select and mask. The output, I probably should have showed you. You can see if I go back into select and mask, you can select the type of output, and the output there I've got there is a new layer with a layer mask, and it's created a new layer just for the grass, and that's fine. We can leave that like that. I can use it as it is. Generally, I'll take it onto its own layer, but it's fine for where we are. So adding all the layers back in, we've got our image there, although we've got some funky stuff going on around the edge of the, if I turn off the background layer, if you can see the edge around my selection isn't that great. That's not good. But with the background turned on, that's going to be fine. We can work with it. And when we add the elements that we're going to add the fog, it won't make too much of a difference anyway, because you won't really see it. Just have to be aware of that when you add it onto its own layer. So now I'm gonna choose the, let me, I often don't do this and I should do it more, is actually name my layers so I know what I'm working on. So this is going to be for the background, ground and castle. Sure I've spelled that correct. Look really bad live streaming. And this is going to be our sky. This is the actual background. Background. And we now have this layer, which is the grass foreground. So it's worth naming your layers. Certainly we're going to be adding a few more layers than that, and we're going to start grouping stuff in a minute. And that's going to make things easy to keep a little bit of control over everything. Sometimes I've done edits that have lasted hours, 3 or 4 hours, and if you don't name things, finding a certain layer that you want to work on can often prove to be quite difficult, or at least time consuming, again adding more time. So let's look at adding some of these fog elements. Now there's a few ways to do this. You can actually use brushes. There are a few fog brushes, a few cloud brushes that make things really easy. I actually found some fog overlay layers on the internet, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to make this really simple. I'm just going to Command or Control A, Command or Control C, which copies it, go back to the layer, and I'm going to paste Control or Command V just above that layer. Actually, it needs to be just behind that layer, and we're going to turn this into screen mode. Now already you can see there that it's actually popping its head around the back of that. If I toggle that layer on and off, it's not bad, right? It's not very big, so we can make it a bit bigger. We can stretch it out a little bit and have a bit of a play around. Bring it up, bring it down. Because we're in screen mode, anything that is pure black in the image just disappears. That's the benefit of screen blending mode.
I was going to say that I'm a big fan of the layer blending modes. I use them in my digital art all the time.
Yes. Yeah, your digital art is fantastic. So I don't know how many different blending modes you must be using, but some of the colors and stuff you get out of those things, crazy good.
This is looking great already. It's got a nice mood it's building, right?
Yeah, there's a few edges that we need to take care of and a few bits and pieces, and we'll add some more and move stuff around. So I'm going to start adding various different bits and pieces. I'll generally add the stuff first, so I'll look at a couple of different fog layers. So we've got this one. Let's add that in there. Obviously, this is a full square, so it's going to look a bit silly. Again, turn that to screen blending mode. Obviously, we can then Command T and maybe add this over this side a little bit. That's a bit more fogged up. I don't want to go too high up. It's going to start affecting the sky a lot. And if you ever go to a place like this, you see most of the fog is down in the valleys. It's not really up in the air. I'm quite high up where I am. My vantage point is fairly high up, so you wouldn't necessarily see fog in the sky area. So I'm going to keep it quite low. And when I start adding masks in a second to these layers, you'll understand what I mean. I'll start masking some of this stuff out. So we'll go back to this, add this layer. This will turn to screen 2. And color dodge, let's turn that back there. Control T this, let's move this over into the corner down here. And maybe just a little bit there. Obviously, as they overlap each other, you're going to get different looks. But we're going to be using the mask tool in a second. We'll get rid of that, and we've got a nice fog here. Actually, this one we could probably get away with not using here, but we'll put it in there to add more than I need, and then swap things around in a little while. So I want a little bit more fog just in the corner down here. So for each of these, let's make that a bit bigger. I'm gonna then mask a few bits and pieces out because we don't need everything here. Let's start adding a mask. By the way, if I group these now, you would have to then put them, because I can group these. Let's group these now. So Control, if you select them all, so select the first one, hold down Shift, select the last in whatever queue you're looking at, and Command or Control G. We've now got a group, but it's turned off the blending mode, so we need to put that back to screen, so the group is in screen. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And then with each of these, I'm going to give them their own mask, and anything that's white here will show up. Anything that you then paint in black. So if we've got the brush there, and we've got black selected as our foreground color, and if we're at 100%, anything I paint here just disappears. I can change my brush. I've got a few brushes. Let's see what we can go with that's a bit different. Let's get maybe a cloud brush. What I've got in the way of clouds. So the edges of this won't be so uniform, so I can use a cloud brush here and actually make it really soft and stuff. Make sure I haven't got any edges around this. I'm going to change the opacity of this in a second anyway, so although we have got harsh lines here, I'm going to add a blending mode for this one, and we're going to look at getting rid of the edge of this one. Actually, this swap brushes, we can do that. Let's go back and have a look. By the way, these cloud brushes you may not have. These are some of the stuff that I've purchased and found over the years. Let's do that one. That seems quite soft, and I think it turns. Let's have it. That's a bit better. So let's just get rid of the hard edges here and here. And similar with this one. This is just a rough go at this, by the way, guys and girls. You can spend a lot of time being very precise here. I'm just being pretty haphazard. And another one for this one. We've got that there. And already behind this, it's a bit too much for me personally, but with the group, I can maybe turn down the fill of the whole group, or work with the opacity, whichever you prefer. I like to mix things up between fill and opacity. So that for me kind of gives a bit more depth to the hillside. I may do some other bits and pieces to the hillside itself in the background and maybe brighten it up because it's in the background. It kind of needs a bit of haze almost. But apart from that, for that layer of fog, that's pretty much done. So let's name this. This is going to be what did I call it before? Background fog. I think it's furthest fog one. We'll call it fog one for now. So that's now in the background of the castle, and we can now come down to the grass layer, and we want to start adding fog in the background. Before I want to do that though, I want to actually look at adding some grass to our layer. So let's just turn that off so we can see what we're doing with the grass here, because working with brushes can be in Photoshop can be quite daunting, but Photoshop has a lot of really good brushes. Now if we go back up to top here and go back to the normal brush, which is let's go do that again, this soft round brush, which is awesome. Let's just close it up for a second. You've got a thing called legacy brushes. Now these are the brushes that Photoshop had years and years ago that they kind of kept, but they may not appear in your Photoshop. Your newer versions of Photoshop, it's not there. What you have to do is actually go into legacy brush. You have to go into the little cog at the top there, go down to the legacy brushes, and then load legacy brushes. I've already done it. It would say there, restore legacy brushes, and you hit OK. And then you'd get this panel come up here. Now in legacy brushes, you have a lot of Photoshop brushes in there that people have forgotten about over the years. And there's one in there called, I don't know if it's in default. I think it's in the default brushes. there is a grass or a couple of grass brushes in here. Let's have a look. And these are the ones I use because they're actually pretty good. There, you've got dune grass and grass. Now, these are really good because they are not just uniform, they actually scatter. So if I make that bigger, by the way, to make a brush bigger, you're just using the bracket key, left or right. This is good. Let's choose a layer above that. Let's add a layer above that because that's what we want to do. It adds grass in a way that's scattered. And obviously, if I make my brush smaller, it'd be smaller. So when we say scattering, we can change what the brush does by the brush panel, which is, I think, function 5, F5. There, so F5, we can change what a brush does by this panel. So this has a lot of scattering on it. It transforms the shape, and I can't remember what that's called. Is it called shape dynamics? Jitter, that's it. So the jitter is controlling the way it kind of moves and stuff. So it's not just going in one direction. But also what we can do is if we come into the brush panel up here, we can change the angle of the brush. So where our hillside is actually angled slightly off, we don't particularly want an angle straight up. We actually want an angle down like this. So now what I need to do really, if I go Control Z, go my history, go back, I'm going to actually work on this layer, although I'm going to put it on top in a second. In fact, I can do it now. So let's put that it is on top. Let's put, yeah, that's strange. Let's make this brush a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna select the color. Now to select the color, just hold down Option. Now I want to select colors from the grass around the area. So if I select Option, I get a color picker, and that color now becomes my primary color. And I want to make the brush a little bit bigger, and I want to. That's gone too big. Look at that. We are at opacity 50, and we want to be 100. So I want to. Let's change my color. My background color wants to be something like that. So I've now got two colors selected. Let's go back again, get rid of that, Control Z or Control Z. And I now have some various colors popping through there. I'm not going to use all these, I'm going to mask them out a little bit. And I have got another brush I'm going to use. Plus, if you look at the grass itself, because it's in the foreground, it's not in focus. So we need to defocus it. We're going to use the blur tool in a minute. But that's given us a little bit of grass there. So if we go back into the grass there, we can use dune grass as well. We've got this, which is actually pretty good. I want to be a bit bigger. I want my foreground now to be slightly different. So let's choose a different color for the foreground and the background. Let's go back and let's cancel that. Let's go. Foreground wants to be that color. And our background can be maybe a green, something like that. Let's go there. And now I have a slightly different brush. And that's just added a little bit of grass back onto. Obviously, it looks a bit strange because we haven't done the things we need to do to it. But that's now filled in that grass area quite well. And if we put our layers in the back of that on as well, it actually looks pretty good. Looks better than it did. If I toggle it on and off, you can kind of see a little bit more there than we lost. And certainly down the bottom here, we need to add a little bit more down there. So let's turn that back off again. And where's my brush? My brush is so small. That's the problem with these grass brushes. They go so small, you can't see them. So let's add some more back in there. Again, we're going to change the color of the grass again. So a really dark foreground and a really bright background, something like that, and add some more grass into there. We can change the angle of the grass. We can go like that a little bit. And there. I'm going to mask a little bit of this out because I don't think we need as much as we need in the foreground here. And then we're going to do a little bit more. I need to add another layer for down here because the colors in the grass, you'll notice from up here and down there, are actually quite different. It's a lot darker down here. The colors are actually massively different. So that'll go on its own layer. So what I'll do here now is add a little mask to that. take a normal brush. So you need to remember to turn your brush back to a normal brush. I'm always forgetting to do that, by the way. I always turn out to something, and it's a pain in the backside. And I want a very sort of large brush diffuse. I just want to take a little bit out. That's too much. Let's take the flow down a little bit to about there, and we can work just on a bit of that. And when we turn the layers back on, we now have some grass back in the areas that we potentially lost. So let's look at, it's going to be more prevalent, by the way, when I add fog in the front. You can see a lot of the original grass at the moment, but when we add fog in front of that in a second, you're going to lose a lot of this hillside, because our selection is still going to be, let me show you, still going to be this. You're not going to see the grass that you currently see in when I add the background in. That bit of grass up there wasn't selected, so this is going to actually do a really good job for us. You'll notice that when I turn the or when I add fog to the bit between this layer and this hillside here, so this hillside and that hillside. Hope that makes sense. If that doesn't, let me know in the comments, and I'll try and explain that a little bit better. I'll actually add some fog in a minute to show you what I mean. So let's add another. I'm going to add another empty layer above this one. I'm actually going to look at the grass down here. Let's just find the grass quickly. Actually, we can just select it there. And I'm going to choose some colors from down here. So let's look at that. It's a foreground color. And as a background color, I'm going to choose something a little bit darker there. And again, let's turn some of these layers off so we can see where we're working. It's that one I want to turn off, not that one. The areas we want to add back are kind of in this area here. So let's add that in there. These are going to be blurred, by the way. They're very, very, very sharp at the moment. Change the size a little bit, go a little bit bigger, add a couple of spots here and there. Nothing too mad. Just that having a slightly different size grass now and again actually lends to the authenticity, if you like. And then on another layer, so I'm going to add another layer, but we'll mask that in a second, because again, it's still too sharp in the foreground. Let's add another layer down here. And we're going to choose some colors that are slightly different again. So our foreground will be maybe this very green here, or that's not too green. Where is it? There. And our background can be maybe a lighter color, so it does something slightly different. So then we need to find our brush for a start. There it is. And then we start adding in down here. So we got that. Make your brush a little bit bigger. Add a few strokes here and there. And if you want, go back to that other brush. Let's go grass. I've got loads of different grass settings down here. Let's go to the grass there. Double click on that, and make that slightly bigger. And slightly bigger again. Slightly bigger again. All I'm doing is taking out what we can see is the transparent parts of the grass edge, if you like. It's not too bad there. Selected okay. I'm not too worried about that part. So let's go back to this one. Go back to a normal brush. And I know this has taken a long time, so I apologize for those watching. We've got to make sure black is our foreground color to get rid of just this edge down there. And then we're going to do the same with this one. Again, you guys can take your time with this kind of stuff. This is just giving you an idea of what's possible. And we can merge these layers now, because we've done everything we need to do with the different colors slightly. We merge these layers. Normally I work non-destructively. This is kind of still non-destructive. It's just having now one layer. So when I do that, that all gets turned off completely. You'd probably work a bit better with the colors up this end, maybe potentially. Maybe add in something a little bit better than what we had in terms of there's a lot of reds in there that probably didn't need. But that's fine. When we add the fog in a minute, you'll see what I mean. I'm going to blur this now slightly. So we can go to filter, blur. If we add it, well, we can add it as a smart filter first if we think we might want to change the values later. So let's just go to, all I did there was went to convert to smart filters first. Now go to blur, and we can go to maybe Gaussian blur. and that's way too much. So bring it right down to 0.1 and just bring it up ever so slightly. It doesn't need to be too much. We just need to match the kind of blurriness of the what we have in the foreground there. So if we maybe that's a bit too much, maybe about there, give or take. Yeah, looks about right to me. It's not too bad, and because it's a smart filter, it's actually added a mask to that as well. And we can, if we really want to, double click on Gaussian blur, go back in there and change the values if you think it's not enough or too much later on. If you don't add it as a smart filter, you wouldn't be able to do that to that layer. It just adds another way of working non-destructively. If you think you've done something wrong later, instead of going back through your history and have to do everything again, you can just change it on the fly. So now we're going to add our, let's just turn the background layer on there. Now we're going to add our fog layer to the layer between this hillside and the hillside behind us. It's got the castle on it. So let's just start looking at changing the names of these. So that's going to be the foreground. Right, it'll do. This is going to be extra grass. Got that completely wrong. Look at that. See that grass. I type quite fast, and we can look at grouping that and that, this layer and that layer, and group that, and we can call that front hill. That's our front hillside with the grass and everything else. So if we turn that off, we lose some of the grass. You'll see what I mean. When we add now between this layer and that layer, we're going to start looking at adding more fog. So we can now get some of these fog. If they're already selected, there's Control C and Control V, and place that here. Sorry, here. No, one place here. Move that around so I can see where it is, because it's quite small. And why am I not seeing that? Let's have a look. And let's try and work out what we've done there that we aren't seeing. That's out because that needs to be up here. That's why I had it between the wrong layer. I'm doing it all the time. I'm always adding it between the wrong layers. It needs to be this layer here. So we can put that there. Now, nope. That needs to be, what have I got the wrong way around here? So let's look at where we're at. Sky placement. We need to have that between that layer and this layer needs to come up to there. Potentials. Let's work out what we've done here. I've got my layering all wrong for some reason. And that goes there. No, that's still gone behind.
Andy, can you take a question?
Yeah, go for it.
I think this is I think this is Martin, even though it says Facebook user. But he says, if you use the grass line layer more often in different pictures, is it useful to save it, or is it just one layer more in the collection?
It's a good question. I mean, as what the grass that I've added. Are we interpreting that as the extra bit of grass?
Yeah, I think it's the grass line that you created, that kind of more orangish one. I think the basic answer that you'll probably say is that it depends on each image, so therefore it might not match any of the other landscapes that you're working on.
Yeah, correct? Exactly that. I mean, you've got the orientation of this hill for a start. You'd have to mess around a lot potentially. It would be per image that you would be working on. You wouldn't necessarily use the same graphic that we've created for this image. It just wouldn't work. It's like when someone says to me, what settings did you use to get the shot? It really doesn't matter what settings. The lighting I had when I was there would be completely different. The editing I'm doing to this image, even if you went and shot the same location, it's probably going to be slightly different in terms of the lighting, color and stuff. Yep. So it's very difficult to answer that question, unfortunately. I do appreciate the question, though. Let's see where we're at with this. So I'm trying to work out where my layers have gone. Where am I at? So is that right? I need to have my front hill at the front and my fog. One. No, that was right where it was. So this is where I often make the. Let me just turn this one to screen mode so I know what I'm doing. So this one needs to be in front of the front hill, which is that one there. So let's put that in front of it. There we go. Right. Okay. So there we are. Right. So now if we move things around, you'll see that the fog is now in front or behind our front hill and in front of the castle. We have lost the fog to the castle, but I'll get that back in a second. That should be there. That's why. And for some reason, it's everything I've done. There we go. Okay. So right, let's. Okay, that's better. There we go. So we now have the fog in between the right hills now. It all depends on where your layers are. Obviously, what's on top needs to be closest, and what's further back potentially needs to be further down your layers, if you like. Although I'll still have the sky placement at the top, that shouldn't matter. We're not really doing a whole lot to the sky area of this image. So I'm now going to start placing, like I did before, some fog layers. I'm probably going to do a few more than I did, certainly down this area, to make it look like the town, which is just off to the right, is actually in fog. And going off to our left, we're going to pretend that we have a left to right wind direction. Let's add some more fog in there. So let's go back to this. Control V that one in there. Turn that to screen blending mode for now. I know we're going to have to change it again later, but let's Control T that and get some fog going throughout our whole image. That looks good. And let's now go to this one, bring that in and change that to screen mode for now so we can see what we're doing. And we can maybe spin this right the way around, have a different angle on the fog, keep things a little bit different. And you'll see what I mean by the grass. We need to do a little bit of work to blend it a little bit better at the top there, certainly. You need to spend more time with the colors. I picked the colors quite quickly in this process, but you'd want to take time and pick some of the better colors from the grass and try and blend them in a little bit better. Let's Control T this. Maybe have this all around that way. Put that there. And again, turn that to screen blending mode. And again, now I'm going to just add a few masks to these. Take a normal brush, make it, or actually, let's not take a normal brush. Let's take a, what do we have before? We had cloud. Let's go cloud brush. Cloud. Let's have a nice soft cloud brush there. And take away the edges like so. We don't want to be too uniform. And we're going to just make that like so. Like I said, I don't know whether these cloud brushes are from Photoshop. I suspect not. I've had these brushes a long time. I couldn't even tell you where I got them from. It's just collecting over the years, as you do. You'd have to do a little bit of research, a bit of search here and there. You can make your own brushes. It's not too difficult to make a brush. But for the sake of this video, we'll pretend that I made this brush. I didn't make this brush. Let's, yeah, that's quite nice. I still want to add a little bit more down here. So I'm going to look at some more of this fog. I'm going to take this one again and add that in here. Turn that to screen blending mode. And Control T. Let's take that there and give that a mask. Take the edge away.
I'm going to say Andy Chanu says, watched it late, but it's brilliant. So Chanu, one of our other moderators, is here.
A lot of Andys today.
Good to see you here, Chanu.
Control. Let's Control V that into there. to blending mode, screen blending mode, and again take the edge away. Again, I could use this brush and just use the brush, which I kind of have done, unfortunately, on the layer itself, which I wasn't watching. So I'm actually going to go back in my history, and let's now take that away properly. And let's just move that ever so slightly. I want that a bit more further down here. My brush back, get the edge away. Down there. So I'm going to take the fill of this one down a little bit. I think it's a bit too much. And let's have a look at this one over here. And take the fill down. I'm going to group these again, but remember, by grouping these now, Control G, you may have to change the blending mode back to screen. It depends. I think Photoshop does a pretty good job to remember nowadays. There was a time where you had to keep changing the blending modes back every time you did something like group stuff. And there we've now kind of got that look that I was kind of going for. I'm going to have a look again because it's starting to bug me, the grass here. We can actually use, we've actually got a mask here, so we can actually use the brush we've got. It's probably a good brush. Just get rid of the edge a little bit better down there. And again, the colors of the grass aren't too good, but you know what? I can change them now. So just above this layer, if we select the extra grass there, if we go to, let's use, what can we use? Let's use hue saturation, see if we can do something with that. And we only want it to affect the grass. So we're going to clip this to the layer below, which is that one there. So if I change something now without clipping it, it's going to change everything below that layer. I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to clip that to just the grass, and you see that it changes just the grass. So where it was this color, I'm going to add a little bit more green color. But now you see it starts to blend in a little bit better. It needs to be darker down the bottom here. So what I can actually do with that, fun enough, I can do that too. If I, sorry, I didn't mean to add a mask there. If I go to, and I tend to use curves, I apologize, people use various things. Again, this is only going to affect the layer beneath. So I'm going to click this to the layer, and I'm actually going to bring, I'm just looking at this area down here for the time being. I'm not worried about the rest of it because I'm going to mask that out in a second. But if I bring that down to about there, it looks pretty good down the bottom here now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to invert this mask. So if I hold down Command I, that turns that mask off. Now what I need is a brush with white as my foreground color. So I can hit X, and white is now my foreground color. And in the areas that I want that to show up, I just need to paint. I've got a flow of 40%. I'm just going to paint that back in there using the same brush. Funny enough, it's quite a good little brush. Just in there, just to darken these areas down. And the mask there, if we look at what that's done, that's literally just used that bit there. We could use anything. We could use, I don't know, exposure potentially. But now you'll see the grass itself, this whole grass layer, if you like, it actually looks a little bit more better. I don't know how else to suggest. Without these two, if I turn that off and that off, there was a lot of red in there that I don't know why it was selecting reds, but there was reds in there that I didn't want to use. So we used just a little hue saturation and a little bit of curves just to make that fit in with the atmosphere a little bit better. It's you know, it's one of them things that you can tweak quite easily. You don't necessarily have to do that. What we're going to do in a little while is actually finish off this picture with what we use a camera raw filter, which is a bit like Lightroom, but the Photoshop inbuilt version of that, pretty much.
All right, just to let you know, we're at the top of the hour. It's
I'm getting very close. Yeah,
yep.
Oh yes, absolutely. I didn't think it would take.
Looks good though. Looks great. You know, it's good to
cool.
see the whole process.
Yeah, so it's pretty much finished. So let's group everything together. If I hit Shift Option Command, I don't know what that is on Windows, and then hit the E button, that's going to give me a check layer at the top there. Which, if I turn everything else off, that's actually pretty much just flattens the layers into
Andy
layer at the top. Yeah.
What was the keyboard shortcut you did for that?
It was Shift Option Command and E. All four buttons.
Option Shift E. Great.
So I think that's Shift Control Command, Shift Control Out.
You mean on a PC?
Shift, yeah, Shift Out, Control and E.
So it's only for Mac users. No.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No.
So now I've got this layer. I'm gonna. I would normally turn it into a smart filter, but I don't really need to do this only because again I like to work non-destructively. I want to change something later. I can do. But I'm going to go straight into the camera raw filter here, and I'm just going to do a very quick edit with things like I'm going to bring the exposure down if it's slightly because I think I like that bit of contrast. My highlights I'm not too worried about. There's not too many highlights. Shadows I might want to push a little bit that way, and I'm working very quickly here, guys and girls, because I realise where we're at. Now, texture and clarity, it's up to you which one to use. For landscapes, I tend to use clarity. For portraits, texture, but actually texture in landscapes works really well. If I boost that, if I show you the clarity, what that does, I think that ruins an image. If I push the texture, I can get some really nice looking, certainly in the front, the grass, everything looks quite good. I'm not going to do too much else. Let's go quickly to the color grading. This was added recently. I love it because I've worked with video, and in video, it's been out in video for a long time. So in my shadows, I want a little bit of blues. In my highlights, I want a little bit of yellows, sort of orangey yellows, and midtones, maybe a slight bit of magenta. It's my kind of style. I apologize for those that think it doesn't work, because I know there's people out there that don't like it. And potentially, I may want to add a vignette, so you can do that from here as well. So let's go to effects. Vignette, we can just darken down the edges, preserve the highlights, and add a feather. I don't do too much, obviously, because I just think it doesn't work massively well for landscapes. But if I want to add anything, it's just to bring out the castle area and draw the eye to that area. So just a slight exposure. If I double click on that, take it back, it's literally a very, very slight exposure there. And that's all I'm really going to do. There's not a huge amount I would do more than that. And the only other thing, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I'm just showcasing Stan's compliment, saying he has to depart, but thanks for the lesson. Very effective way to enhance the mood of the image.
Perfect, nice one. That's the idea. Great stuff. The only other thing I would do from here, potentially, if I need it, if I think I need it, is a color lookup. And for this, because it's a very dark, I might use something like night from day. It makes it very, very blue, but I'll bring the fill right down to 0 and then just introduce it ever so slightly and add some nice blues in the skies. And that's pretty much it. You just have to remember to work with the grass a little bit better than I did there. It's a little bit funky on the edges. It needs to be blurred, maybe a little bit more. Just have to work that however you think your image will need it. I hope that's given some people a few ideas to make a dramatic image. It's an image that I loved, and I loved doing the edit on this one. I think the output was really good. Everyone liked it on social media, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it looks great. Looks great. It's fun to see. And as Stan said, very effective way to enhance the mood of the image.
Absolutely.
And Michelle says, or Andrew says, going to try this when I come back from shooting a local castle next week.
Good stuff.
And Michelle says, thank you.
Excellent.
I went to click on her comment and his popped up. So
okay.
Lots of comments coming in. Nice. Yeah, it looks great.
Happy with that?
Yeah. So thanks everyone for let's see. Shanu says, I suck at landscapes. This will help. So
brilliant. Perfect.
Thomas says, thank you.
Good stuff. Yep. Good to have you.
And then I wanted to remind everyone that Andy does workshops, so you can check him out at Andy Hornby Photography Workshops.
Yep. Photography Workshops.
It's what?
Photography Workshops.
Yeah.
.uk.
Which stands for Andy Hornby.
Yes, absolutely.
And then so we have Andy Hornby Photography Workshops. And then don't forget to check out the Andy Hornby Photography Store, where you have courses and I believe like presets, things like that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So I got lots of sky. I got a sky replacement kit, which has over 400 images that I've collected over the last 2 years with a friend of mine. So yeah, the sky you saw I used in there was one that I've got many years ago.
Fantastic. And then do check out Andy on YouTube. So youtube.com/Andy Hornby Photos.
Love YouTube.
And he's also on Instagram, Andy Hornby Photos. And don't forget, on Wednesdays, we always post that Instagram follow link in the groups. That's a big hit.
Yeah, I'll try to get an image on there when I can.
Except some people cheating, posting multiple times.
Really? Oh, you can stay on there. Don't post multiple times.
Yeah. And then Andrew's saying, when is the next one? I'm not sure if he means live video events or one of your workshops.
I think you do live events every week, don't you?
Sometimes, yeah. Next Friday we should be doing another one. And then for you doing a workshop, when is your next workshop?
My workshop's always on the website. You can find my Facebook page is under the same name, Andy Hornby Workshops, that kind of stuff. But the website is pretty good for workshops and all other bits and pieces. Worth looking there.
Excellent.
Coming up.
Yeah, this was very nice. Thank you. So thank you so much, Andy, awesome. And thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And as always, any new information, live video events, contests, special news, always check the top pin post of the groups. Yeah, so definitely. The top pin post of the Photoshop and Lightroom group, the Photoshop and Photography group, the Digital Art group. And Andy has been taking over the Learn Photoshop group, which maybe you have to set up a contest there, right?
I think so.
See if I can get Adobe to sponsor it for maybe some Creative Cloud, free Creative Cloud. Yeah. So I think this is Martin. He's saying thanks to Andrew for the great group. Thanks to you. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for attending. And I will be posting the recording to the top of the groups soon enough and be giving that to Andy to share as well. So thanks everybody. And thanks so much, Andy.
Yes, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.